Hey everybody, it's 1 o'clock. Thanks for showing up to this session of our CAD training program for SolidWorks. We've got a return presenter, Brad Williamson from SolidWorks Corporate, all the way from Tennessee to show us some tips and tricks. So without further ado, take it away, Brad.
All right. Thank you, Lars. Hey everyone, this is Brad here, and it's my pleasure to be back again with you. I think I was here, I think it was last month. But I was glad to be invited back, and we've got a good session for you today. But before we do that, I want to tell you a little bit about what it's like in Tennessee right now. First of all, it's about 90 degrees, and it's spring break week, or fall break week rather, for the school district in my area. And if you're in Middle Tennessee or Georgia or Atlanta or Alabama or any of those surrounding areas, what that means is that you head for the beach. And this was a picture that I took a couple spring breaks ago at Panama City Beach on a family vacation that we took. So that's pretty much where everybody goes if you're in the South and you want to get away from your home. You want to get away from the heat and humidity to more heat and humidity. And, you know, the thing that we always have a great time at Panama City, but, you know, there's always this conundrum of what do you do with your stuff when you're at the beach? You've got your phone, you've got your keys, your wallet, all your valuables. And I never knew what to do with this. So, you know, what do? We go and look up online and see what do other people do, a little crowdsourcing there. And what I found is a whole bunch of little clever solutions to this problem of what to do with your stuff at the beach. And one of them was to take an old lotion bottle, hollow it out, clean it out, cut it in half, and now you have a nice discreet way of putting all your valuables at the beach. Well, it turns out there's this whole class of these little life hacks out there, little clever solutions to get you around little everyday problems, like, you know, when your cables fall behind your desk, for example. Take your binder clips, put them on the edge of the desk. Pretty clever. And there's life hacks for home too, like cool ways to hang a sweater so it doesn't get all the bumps in it. Just non-intuitive little solutions. This is one, I haven't tried this out yet, but it looks pretty cool. So you don't have to carry around a funnel and get your trunk all oily. Use a screwdriver to pour oils. Anybody tried that? Oh, looks like it might work though, right? So all these life hacks are out there, and you know, kind of the big overarching theme is, well, when you know better, you do better. And as it turns out, that applies to SolidWorks as well. So what I've done is polled a lot of my colleagues, the technical managers, mostly in North America, but also got some great tips and tricks from some of my counterparts worldwide. And we continually compile a big list of all kinds of tips and tricks, or basically SolidWorks life hacks that really just encompass the core things we do every day, from part modeling, sketching, just general usability. And I'm going to lay on you as many as we can squeeze into the time allotted today. And if you're wondering, well, is this presentation for me? I would say this is somewhere in the intermediate to mildly advanced category. If you've been using SolidWorks for quite a while, I still think there's going to be some great takeaways for you. And if you're maybe a newer or less experienced user, I think you'll have a lot of great takeaways there too. So my name is Brad Williamson, and I'm a technical manager based out of Nashville, and it's my pleasure to be here today. And we're going to jump in, first of all, taking you through some general usability tips. I think I have about 3 dozen in this category that we're going to burn through. Then I've got maybe 2 dozen or so related to sketching. And those are going to really help you speed up the way that you work in the software. And that's kind of why I front-end loaded so many tips in those 2 categories. Then we'll get into some general modeling in tips and tricks, assemblies, and then of course we'll follow that up with some drawings. Because just like when you go to the beach, just like when you're trying to fold a sweater better, when you know better, you do better. Now, the format for the presentation today, I don't expect you to take a lot of notes on this because we're going to rapid fire through what I think will be about 70 different tips. So I want to just acquaint you with the style of the presentation. I'm not going to be going into software live because it takes too long to fire up the software and open files for every use case. Instead, what we're going to do is I've mimicked the SolidWorks interface on the slide layout here. So all you have to do is just acquaint yourself with this slide one time, and you'll see where all the tips show up. So I want you to pay attention when we bring up a new tip. it'll show up here in the title. And down in the lower corner, we'll describe the tip. In the lower right corner, I'll show you how to access it. There'll be a little quick summary of where to find that command. And then when applicable, in the upper right corner, I've listed what version of the software that tip appeared. When did we implement that enhancement or that capability? Everything that I'm showing you today will be in 2017 and prior. So let's get started first off with just some of the general usability enhancements. And if you, Lars, how did folks receive the link to the cheat sheet? Will that? Okay, so via email, if you're registered for this session, you'll see a couple of Google links. One is to a downloadable PDF. The other is to the live Google sheet that lists out all of the tips that I'm going to cover today. So you don't have to try to take your own notes. Just look at that sheet, maybe highlight or mark the ones that are kind of interest to you, or scribble down some notes in those forms. So you don't have to do a lot of your own note taking. And then that'll be a good reference sheet for you as well. So be sure to pull up those documents, either the PDF form or the Google Sheet version. So let's start off with some of my favorite usability enhancements, just general user interface tips that'll help you be a little bit more productive. Now, like with most programs, if you go under the File menu, you're used to seeing a recent documents list. Now, some interesting things that we do in SolidWorks, though, in that recent documents list is, first of all, there's a folder button there that will show you what folder those recent files are coming out of. Now, if you're working out of PDM, this is probably not going to be all that important to you because your local cache is, you pretty much know where that is, right? But you might have a folder structure within that local cache. So this still might be somewhat helpful. The other thing that's kind of cool about this recent documents list is that you can thumbtack your recently used documents so that you can quickly return to them. So say if you're working in a particular project and there's a set of files that you always want to be able to return to, you can thumbtack those. Now, there's one little step that you can go even further that I like. It's one of my favorite usability features, and that is the letter R shortcut. If you hit the letter R, it brings up a recent documents list in kind of a tiled view. So now you see a thumbnail of each of those recent documents. And I think 2018 and prior, I believe we limit that to around 16 documents. Just FYI, in 2019, we expand that to 100. I'm not sure why you need 100 recent documents, but somebody asked for it, and the developers gave that to us. Now, what I like, another thing I like about the recent documents list is that if you click on the little double arrow, it expands this out. So it's almost like a mini version of the file open dialog. So you have access to choosing when you open a document, do I want it to be resolved, lightweight? Do I want to open a specific configuration or display state? So a lot of the things that I can do in the file open dialog are available to me right here in this recent documents list. Now, again, if you're working out of PDM, you're probably opening from PDM using Windows Explorer. But if you are just working out of your local cache, then I encourage you to definitely take advantage of the letter R shortcut for recent documents. Now, another tip that's been around for a really long time. In fact, I'm not even sure. Yeah, there's a question. Mm-hmm.
I found that in documents feed up your recent files in the file menu.
Yeah.
And so you don't get as many recents. And so actually, proxy, I wrote for the script, there's a macro. It will give you the of the active document. And doing a Windows shortcut in like a local Windows SolidWorks shortcut, really nice because you can have icon auto-populated somehow by SolidWorks with the ISO view of the assembly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's visual and links to all your important documents. A little bit better than the pin in my mind because your recent documents. Okay.
Nice, nice. And so we have a macro that can overcome some of those limitations of the pinned. Is that something that you can share, or that people know how to get access to? Okay, Cool. So it sounds like we'll be able to make that available to y'all. That's a great tip. The next thing I wanted to talk about is a tip that goes back. It goes back so far. In fact, I couldn't even find what version this was introduced. It might be all the way back to SolidWorks 95 or 6. I'm not sure, but it's a tool called Find References, and this command is located under the File menu. File, Find References. What it does, though, is hugely important. It will show you a list of all the file paths where all the reference documents in your assembly are coming from. And that's important to know because there's going to be a lot of times where you might open up an assembly and something just doesn't look right. Like a part looks like it's out of date, or maybe it's not even the right part to begin with. Well, just doing a file find references sometimes will reveal to you that your documents are not coming from where you think they are. In which case we've got here, if I look through this, I can see that just about everything is coming from my PDM local cache, except for this assembly right here, which is coming off of an E drive. Now, somehow Windows has found either a duplicate copy or somehow it's found a file that matches that name, but is not in the proper location. And that's what that problem stems from. So file find references is just a very good sanity check. When you open something up and it doesn't look quite right, it's a way to find out, are things loading from where you think they are? Now, for folks that are using PDM, this is less and less of a problem because PDM does a very good job of managing those references. If you're not in a PDM environment, this is a pretty common issue, and file find references is a command that can definitely help you. Now, as our interface has gotten more and more customizable, it's pretty easy for folks to accidentally move something around or undock, say, the command manager, or undock the feature manager tree. And sometimes it's not completely obvious how to restore things back to where they need to be. So one thing you can do is just drag on that undocked interface item. And as you move it toward either the side or the top of the screen, you'll see these little helpers that will just attach it back in place where it belongs. Now, for newer users, sometimes that's not always obvious as well. So one thing that we did in 2016 is introduced a tools options setting that allows you to lock the interface so that you can't undock the command manager. And that might be a good, maybe that's a best practice that you would think about implementing perhaps for newer users who struggle with something like that. Now, in 2012, we introduced a very useful command that's turned out to be pretty popular. It's called command search. If you haven't used command search before, it's located up in the upper right corner of the screen. It looks like a little search bar, and it will allow you to search based on commands within the SolidWorks user interface. It's really handy in cases where maybe you know that a certain command exists, but perhaps you don't use it very often, and you're just not sure where it's located. Like the flex feature, for instance. If I just start typing in any sequence of keywords, it'll match up those characters with any commands that match it. Now, if I find the command that I'm interested in, I can execute it right there just by picking it out of this command search menu. That's fine, but I can go a couple of steps farther than that. If I decide that, yeah, I think I'm going to use the flex on my next project, I'm going to use it quite a bit, might be nice to have that in my toolbars, I can just drag right from the command search and drop it into my command manager. That's nice. The other thing that's helpful is if you notice the eyeball icon in this command search, it will show you where that command is located, either in the menus or the toolbars. So if you're not taking advantage of command search, give that a shot. It can help you save you a little bit of time of having to hunt around for those lesser frequently used commands. Now, if you polled, I would say, more experienced users, folks that have been using the software for any period of time, what is their single favorite usability shortcut? I would guess that the majority of folks would say S key. The S key is exactly as it says. It's the letter S. When you hit that, it brings up a context-sensitive shortcut bar right to your fingertips. The nice thing about this S key shortcut is it's customizable and it's context dependent. So that means if you hit the letter S in sketch mode, you'll get a different set of commands versus part mode versus assemblies versus drawings. And you can customize this any way you like simply by right-clicking inside that menu anytime the S key menu is available, and it brings up a customize window. And now all you have to do is pick, okay, I want to customize it for assemblies or customize it for parts, and then go in the list of all the available flyout toolbars or icons, find the command you want, drag and drop it into the S key, and then you can reorder those, you can resize the dialog, and really get a totally customizable experience. And this is something that I do, say, on a project by project basis. There might be a time where I'm doing a lot of sheet metal, so I might want to put some sheet metal shortcuts in there. If I'm doing a lot of surfacing for a time, I'll customize that with some of my more frequently used surfacing commands. The letter S shortcut key, probably the biggest time saver among that most experienced SolidWorks users would tell you is their favorite. Now, when you work with assemblies that get more sophisticated, where you have a number of configurations or display states, you know that in the feature manager tree, we show you what, for that assembly and for all the components that are in the assembly, we show you what configuration is active and optionally what display state is active. Now, the thing is, this can get really cluttered. If you have a big assembly, it makes the feature manager tree spread out really wide, and it's kind of unsightly to look at, especially if you don't have a lot of configurations. So something that we added in 2017 was a tree setting, and all you do is right-click up here at the top of the feature manager tree, just right-click on the top name of the assembly, and choose Tree Display, and there's a new option there that says Do Not Show if there's only one configuration or display state. No need to say default there if that's the only configuration. So it's a nice way to clean up the feature manager display a little bit, and it would then look a little tidier. Now, anytime you have dimensional input, say I'm modifying a dimension or maybe typing in a fillet radius or a chamfer value, you're familiar with the with on-screen input, and you're familiar with the spin boxes. And of course, a few releases ago, we also added this tool, this little wheel, this thumb wheel, that lets you more smoothly cycle through a range of values instead of just tapping on the spin box. But where do those spin box increments come from? Well, they're in the Tools Option settings under System Options. So whether you're in English units or metric units, there's a default value for those spin box increments. So you can set those. So if I'm working on a really small design, I might want to have a spin box increment maybe on the order of 0.06, 0.03, something like that. If I'm working on a bigger design, maybe a big frame or a weldment, then I might want that to be more on the order of an inch or two. So I can change that kind of on a project by project basis. But here's a little tip that I think even advanced users might not even know you could do. On the fly, when you're tapping on those spin boxes, of course, when I tap up and down, that's going to give me the default value. But did you know that if I hold down the Alt key as I'm hitting the spin box, it'll go in increments 1/10 of the default value. If I hold down the Control key as I tap the spin box, it goes 10x. So a nice little way with a couple of keyboard modifiers that I can control the spin box increment without having to go into the Tools Option settings to do it. And remember, on your cheat, if you haven't downloaded your cheat sheet, all of this information, I know I'm going pretty fast here, but this is all in that little cheat sheet that shows you a summary of the tip, as well as where to find that. So as your feature manager gets busier, complex parts, bigger assemblies with lots of components, is there a way just to collapse the tree down in one shot? And the answer is yes. All you have to do is hit Shift-C, and that'll just collapse that tree right on down. Pretty sure that's a standard, that's a Windows shortcut as well, right? That works for Windows Explorer. But nice to know for SolidWorks as well. Now, what's missing from this screen? Feature manager tree, right? The feature manager tree is missing. Would I ever want to work without the feature manager tree? And the answer is yes, if you take advantage of a capability that we added in SolidWorks 2016 that's called breadcrumbs. You may not have paid attention to this, but it's a pretty significant user interface enhancement that we added in that release. And what it does is brings kind of a mini version of the feature manager right to your cursor, just specific to the item that you pick on. So for example, if I go pick on this letter D here, pick on a face, it pops up this mini feature manager that shows me the sketch, the feature, the part, the assembly, all the way up the tree, but just in kind of a one-line form. So without having to expand the feature manager, I can do things like edit a sketch, edit the feature, I can access the planes, do mates. It's a mini version of the feature manager right at my fingertips with that breadcrumbs. Now, you may have seen this pop up. If I were to pick on that letter D, for example, you may see the breadcrumbs pop up here in the upper corner of the screen. That's kind of the default behavior. But if you want them to show up right at your cursor, there's a keyboard shortcut for that, and it's just the letter D, just like I'm picking on here in the example. Pick on the letter D, and it will bring up those breadcrumb shortcuts right to your cursor. It'll take a little bit to get used to that new way of working, but I promise you, if you start to use those breadcrumbs, it's going to really cut down on the amount of mouse travel you have to do back and forth across the screen to access the feature manager. In fact, you may find that you can work a majority of the time without the feature manager even being visible if you make good use of these breadcrumbs. Now, in SolidWorks, there's a lot of different ways that we need to select things. We select components to do mates. We select sketch entities to do sketch relationships. We select components to hide and suppress. So there's all kinds of great selection tools that we have in the pop-up toolbar. If you just drop down this little arrow, it gives you all kinds of tools for different ways to select, like select all, volume select, select suppressed, select hidden. But there's some really cool ones here you can take advantage of. For example, like select the parts that are mated to the part that I have selected. That's kind of handy sometimes. Or one of my favorites, selecting all the toolbox components in one shot. Maybe I want to group them together or suppress them all in one go. I have a nice way of gathering them all up without having to manually search through the feature manager tree. So with that command active, you can see now all the toolbox parts are highlighted. Now I can do whatever I need to do with them. Maybe change the color, assign a material, put them into a folder, suppress them, hide them, etc. Lots of good selection tools that are at your fingertips either through the pop-up toolbar or across the top of the main toolbar where you see the little arrow drop-down list. Now, you're probably all familiar with doing a box select. Drag a box and select whatever's in the box. But sometimes the things that you need to select don't always fit within that box. So you can very easily toggle to a lasso selection instead, just through the right mouse menu. And now it's easy for me to navigate my way around a more complex selection set to get just the items that I need. I find myself working about 50-50 between the box select and the lasso select. And in fact, you could even just do a keyboard shortcut to toggle between box and lasso select if you like. Now, here's a common problem. I've got a set of split faces here, and I want to just select all these letters and give them a different color. Oops, I just lost my selection set. Well, the good news is that if you just click out in space in the pop-up toolbar, there's a command called previous selection. So if you had a whole bunch of things selected and then you fat fingered it or you hit an accidental keystroke and you lost your selection, don't worry about it. Just click out in space, go to the pop-up toolbar and hit previous selection, and your previous selection comes back. Great. So I can continue on with my work. Now, if I think I'm going to return to that selection set again and again, through the right mouse menu, I can save that selection set. It's almost like layers in Photoshop. I can save that group of entities as a selection set, so I don't have to repick them every time. I just go into the tree, under my selection sets, and I'll see that group of entities, and now I can quickly apply a color, apply a material. Maybe I'm doing a stress analysis. I can put a load on them, put a restraint on them, without having to reselect each of those entities every time. That was an enhancement in 2015. Pretty popular once you discover it, but it's one of those that kind of flew under the radar. So hopefully you can get some mileage out of that. Going back to 2012, one of my favorite little usability enhancements that that was snuck in that release is the unit switcher. And it's so obscure you may not have even noticed it, but down in the bottom corner of the status bar, where it shows the units, MMGS right here, if you click on that, it brings up a little pop-up to where you can quickly toggle to a different unit system without having to go through the Tools Options menu to find that. All right, so software is notoriously bad about help. It's not just SolidWorks, it's every piece of software, right? Help is not always very helpful. And, you know, SolidWorks is not immune to that criticism at times. But I'll tell you one thing that we really do well, I think, is contextual help. And what I mean by that is, let's say I'm in the middle of a command, like the flex command. Here I am in my property manager. There's a lot of options here. What do I do with all these different options? Well, if you just click in the corner of any property manager tool, it will bring you to the specific help page for that command. And I'm telling you, this is a superior way of trying to navigate the help system versus just going to the help menu and then trying to search and look through the help system to find the command of interest. So it takes me right to the help page for the flex feature. I can do a Control F, a standard Control F search and find here if I want to do a text-based search just for that command. That's fine. But it's a great way of finding what exactly do all those little options in that feature mean without having to wade through the entire help system. Now, speaking of these property managers, if I'm doing things like chamfers or fillets where I have lots and lots of selections, these property manager dialog boxes for the longest time were pretty hard to work with. And you had to use the little scroll bars to try to wade through all the different selections. So in 2016, they fixed that by making these property manager boxes size to fit. If you grab on this little dot, you can drag that down and resize it. Even better yet, you can just right click anywhere in that property manager and say auto size, and it will fill the number of selections that you have. So if I'm doing a lot of fillets, a lot of chamfers with multiple edges all at one time, those property manager input boxes, you'll want to be able to auto size those.
Can you have that setting just set for auto size?
It doesn't do it automatically.
Okay.
No. Yep. Yeah. And I'm not sure why. I could speculate that maybe it's because they don't want to, maybe for a new user, if it auto sizes, they might not realize that there's options down below that. By the way, the question was, do the boxes automatically resize themselves? And they don't. And I think that might be the reason. Sometimes I need to select everything all in one shot. Well, this goes back, I don't know when Select All was first invented. I think it predates Windows, but we all know the universal shortcut for Select All, right? Control A. And it works in SolidWorks too. If I do a Control A, it selects everything. But I may want to filter that. So we put a little bit of a twist on it. So for instance, if I want to fillet all of the edges in the model, then do this. Select one edge and then hit Control A, because what you've now told it is select all of the thing that I just selected. So now I have all the edges selected. Fillet everything, no problem. Pick a face. Control A selects all the faces. Great if you want to color something or apply a texture or a material. Really works great in drawings where I want to maybe take all of the notes and put them on a layer, or take all of the dimensions. And now you're not having to manually select those. You can just pick one dimension, Control A, and now you've selected all the dimensions. Stay tuned. I've got a supercharged tip that will help us take advantage of that select all here in a bit. All right, so as my models get more complex, a lot of times I'm showing reference geometry, I'm showing dimensions, annotations, a whole bunch of stuff on screen, and it gets kind of cluttered. You've always been able to go under this eyeball icon. You can drop this down, and it will show you all of the different reference items like axes, planes, and such, and you can just turn them on and off as you wish. But what about if I just want to turn them all on or off in one shot? And you could do that starting in 2017, not by clicking the drop down, but instead poke the eyeball itself. Just click on it. It'll feel weird at first, but when you do it, everything goes away. And that icon stays depressed so that you know it's in a toggled state. Now, sometimes you might want to be able to rotate your model in more of like a turntable style as opposed to just kind of tumbling the model. So we added an option back in 2013, and it's just a right mouse click option. It's called Rotate About Scene Floor. It works really good for bigger structures or things that have kind of weird aspect ratios, very long as opposed to tall. And when you turn that on, you'll find that they rotate really nicely about the vertical axis of the model. Gives it more of that turntable style of a feel. Now, other models, it's going to feel weird if you have that setting on. So I just encourage you to experiment with it, and you'll figure out which cases it either feels or looks better to use that option versus others. You can just toggle it on the fly through the right mouse menu. It's an on the fly setting, Lars. So you just toggle it when you need it. But by it will affect, I believe it's file specific, but that's a good question. I haven't tested it. Yeah. I think that would be my intuition. So we think that affects just the open files, just file specific. Now, to get even a little bit more granular on this, sometimes I want to rotate about just a specific entity. You can do this with the middle mouse. What you do is you click on the entity with the middle mouse button first and then drag it. So it works great for edges, axes, even vertices. Click with the middle mouse and then drag, and now you're rotating about a specific entity. Even cylindrical faces works for that. This is really handy on designs that have very strange aspect ratios. When things are really long, for example, you might want to rotate about an edge of the model as opposed to about the centroid. So there we have it. We've burned through about 2 or 3 dozen. I forget how many we had here in the user interface category. But what we've got there is just a whole bunch of nice little usability enhancements ranging from 2017 all the way back to, gosh, as early as I can remember for some of those. I hope you found a few things in there that will just improve your day-to-day efficiency. And this is a great place to pause too and ask the live audience or the live stream audience if there's any questions or if we need to go back and rehash anything that we talked about. Interesting. Okay, so the rotate about scene floor looks like it applies to all files that are open. Okay, good to know. Any questions from the live stream, Lars? Okay, great. All right, let's move on ahead to the next category. We're going to spend some time talking about some usability tips, these life hacks that apply to sketching. Because second to just the general user interface, one of the areas where we spend a whole lot of our time is in sketch mode. So I've got a couple dozen tips and tricks related just to sketching. When you start a sketch in SolidWorks, there's a behavior that you can set that determines whether or not that model will rotate into the normal sketch view. Now, for new users, maybe if you're coming from, say, a Creo background or you're coming from a 2D background, if that setting, if you don't auto-rotate into that normal view, it can feel a little weird. I'm drawing on a 2D face, but I'm in a 3D view, and it's a little disorienting. So there's a setting that we can turn on in the tools options that will automatically rotate into the flat 2D view. And it makes it a little bit less intimidating. And now I'm drawing straight on in the 2D view. Now, SolidWorks has always rotated into the 2D view for the first sketch that you create, but not the subsequent ones. So in 2012, they added an option setting to make that a default. Always auto-rotate normal to the sketch plane. And that's just a setting that you can turn on as a system option for your preferred behavior. Now here's one. Sometimes you want to go normal to a specific face, but the orientation that it puts the model in is not always intuitive, or it's not always the direction that you want. Well, did you know that you can specify a second direction for what the top vector is going to be when you rotate into that normal view? And all you do is just control select whatever your second face is going to be before you hit that normal to icon. So in this case, we want that angled face to be the top vector, maybe for dimensioning convenience or whatever. What's interesting about that is that now defines in that sketch, that defines what is horizontal and vertical. So you can use that to your advantage when there are cases where I want to rotate normal to a specific face, but I also want to specify the top vector orientation. So just remember, it's a simple control select to grab two orthogonal faces. Easy stuff. You've already set it. It has by picking that second face, you're defining what the direction of the top vector is. Yeah. You go into a sketch mode at that point. Yep. Now, for some of the sketch entities we have, I can think of rectangles, slots, circles, arcs. There are different options for how you sketch those. Like rectangles, for instance, there's center rectangle, there's corner rectangle, there's a parallelogram. And you have those choices, of course, in the drop down. You can pick which one you want to draw as you're choosing the tool. You can also cycle between them when you're in the property manager. But did you know you can use the letter A to toggle in that property manager without having to move your mouse over to the property manager to cycle those? So that's a nice shortcut. I get a lot of mileage out of this when I'm doing arcs, because I like to jump between, say, tangent arcs and 3-point arcs, or center arcs and tangent arcs. So without having to reselect the tool or without having to go to the property manager, I can just use the letter A, stay in the arc tool, and it will cycle me between those different ways of drawing. That was a 2001 edition, believe it or not. I didn't find out about this until one of my colleagues pointed it out to me a couple of years ago. Here's a little bit more of a recent addition. I want to make a perpendicular relationship between these non-perpendicular lines. Well, starting in 2015, we recognized, hey, I shouldn't have to select two lines to do that. If I just pick on the corner vertex, the software should know what those two lines that are intersecting, and I can just make the relationship from selecting the vertex. So this applies to perpendicular relationships, and it works really well for tangent relationships as well. If I have a line and an arc, I can just click that endpoint or the vertex, and from the pop-up toolbar, select either the tangent or the perpendicular relationship. Saves me from making one extra selection. So I get a lot of mileage out of that one in sketch mode. For the longest time, we made it really hard for people to select midpoints. I've got a line, I want to put something on the midpoint of it. You couldn't do it. Or you had to know a little secret. You had to right click on it and then say select midpoint. So they finally got smart in 2016. Now you can just pick the midpoint of a line like we should have been able to do forever. Sorry, but now you can, and it works great, just like you'd expect. So I can create dimensions, sketch relationships, inferences, all those things I want to be able to do to midpoints without having to play any games. Now here's one that you may not know. I want to drag this whole sketch and just move it. Now, does that look like magic to anybody? There's no constraints on this sketch, by the way, no dimensions. What did you expect to happen there? Either the one line could move, or the whole sketch got all wonky on me, didn't it? Because it was under constrained. So what's the magic behind this? Well, it's a little bit of a hidden byproduct of drag and drop. What if I just wanted to make a copy of that whole thing? I could select the whole thing, right? And then control, drag and drop it, and I would get a copy of it, wouldn't I? That doesn't surprise anybody. So all you have to do is just let go of the control key before you drop, and it'll move that whole group of entities as opposed to copying them. Okay, so let me say that one again. You select a whole group of entities, doesn't matter if they're constrained or not, control, drag, but before you drop, let go of the control key and then drop it. And it will just move them all regardless of their constraint status, provided you can move it. Of course, it wouldn't work if one of the corners was anchored down, obviously. But it'll keep you from that situation where, gosh, I'm afraid to move it because it's going to invert on itself. Okay, that won't happen with this little technique. Now, to go one step further, in 2017, we made this even easier by including these sketch contours. So now what happens is that when you sketch a closed profile of any kind, it will shade. So just a little fun fact, this is technology that we borrowed from the 3D Experience products. That's the way the Sketcher works in our next-gen 3D Experience products, and people really liked that. So we borrowed that and put it in SolidWorks Desktop. And when you, by virtue of turning on these sketch contours, and it's the default setting once you move to 2017, but these do a couple of nice things for you. First of all, they show you when your contour is closed. If it doesn't turn shaded, it's not closed. So you better look closer. It's either overlapping or it's not quite closed up. Good little troubleshooting tool. Second, now all I have to do to move that under constrained region is just pick in the purple space somewhere and drag it. So it's like its own rigid body almost. It has a little bit of a downstream benefit in that you can kind of do some crude mechanism type of layouts with these shaded contours sort of acting like their own little rigid bodies. So that's just a byproduct of being on 2017. If you've wondered, why did my sketch just turn purple? Now, going back probably to the earliest days of SolidWorks, there's a couple of different ways you can draw lines. I think a lot of people know these, but the default way of drawing is the traditional, going back to, I think, AutoCAD time, where you sketch chained lines. Click, 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 click. And it just chains the line until you turn off the line command or hit escape. If you want to draw lines that aren't connected to each other, all you do is just drag the mouse as opposed to just click, click. And you don't have to reselect the line tool each time. So it's a nifty little shortcut that lets you quickly cycle between drawing either chained entities or not, or unchained entities, just by virtue of whether I click, click or click, drag. And as you get into a small space, or if I've got a lot of entities, invariably you're going to run into a situation where you accidentally create a sketch relationship or you constrain to something you didn't mean to. But did you know that if you just hold the control key down as you're sketching, it will override the automatic relationships? Okay, so that's kind of a nice little on-the-fly tool where if you feel like the sketcher is just trying to snap too much and you don't want it to create some of those relationships, just hold down that control key and then you can freely sketch. It'll still give you the inference lines that show you, hey, this is where the horizontal is, this is where the endpoint is, but it won't actually create the relationship. So it's just a nice little on-the-fly tool that you can use. Going all the way back to 2005, we introduced an awesome little tool called Power Trim, the scissors tool. And this does a lot of things for us. It does trim, it does extend, it does trim corners. It even just lets you swipe over geometry and like a pencil eraser and trim stuff away. But did you know that if you hold the Shift key while you're using Power Trim, it now becomes a Power Extend? It's just the opposite. I've got all these unextended lines. If I hold Shift while I'm dragging, it turns into an extend tool. Pretty nifty. It saves me from having to go and set an option on the tool and just cycle that on the fly. Now, here's the real bonus feature. I'm using Power Trim, slice away a bunch of stuff. No prob, no prob. Everything's looking good. Oops, I changed my mind and I want to go back. If you retrace your steps and hit on those little red dots, it undoes the last trim. Okay, that's pretty cool. And I didn't know about that one either. One of my colleagues who's smarter than me found that. You just swipe back over it and it undoes the trim. Now, the caveat to this is that it's all within one swipe. As soon as I let go of the mouse in that trim operation, then it loses its memory of what you just did. then I would have to resort to the regular undo command if I wanted to backtrack. That's pretty nifty. Did anybody in the room know about that one? The experts, right? The experts know, but yeah, I guarantee you'll be able to put that one to use right away. So sketch fillets, there's a time and a place to put fillets in a sketch as opposed to making fillet features. We made this quite a bit easier in 2010 by making the sketch fillet tool dynamic. So you can pick on you can window select an area, you can pick a corner, pick a vertex, and then when you hit that sketch fillet tool, now you can dynamically drag it to set the radius. Before, it popped up immediately and wanted you to type in the radius value. And sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you just want to eyeball it, right? So you just grab that little radius indicator, drag it, and there you go. I need to make a virtual sharp between those two lines. The quick little shortcut for that, it's not the most intuitive thing, but all you do is control select the two theoretically intersecting lines, and then from the pop-up toolbar, hit the sketch point icon. Probably don't use that tool very much, but for this purpose, it works really well. It will create a point at the virtual intersection between those lines, and it is constrained. So if the position of those lines move, that virtual sharp is going to move along with it. Now I have a dimensionable point if I need to be able to grab that theoretical intersection. If you're wondering why we had a sketch point tool, that's a good use case for it right there. Now, there are going to be cases where maybe I'm doing a concept for a design and I don't know all my dimensions just yet, but I do like to work with a fully defined sketch so we don't accidentally nudge something, just so I can kind of lock things down. There is a tool in the sketch toolbar that lets you fully define your sketch. Now, this can, depending on how you've customized your command manager, sometimes people like to move that command around. For me, the best advice I can give you is if you want to find that fully defined sketch tool, just use your command search that I showed you earlier up here in the top of the toolbar. Just go up there and type in fully define, and you'll find that command for fully defined sketch. In the fully defined sketch property manager, you can pick an entity like a reference. Where do you want the things to be measured from? Like maybe a corner vertex or something. And then it will create a dimension scheme for you that will define the sketch. You may not like all the dimensions. You might want to change it around a little bit, delete one, add another back or whatever. But if you simply just for clarity's sake and for security purposes, you want a fully defined sketch without having to wade through and figure out exactly what dimensions are needed, use that tool, fully defined sketch, and it will give you a dimension scheme that will work without over constraining it. That was a 2007 enhancement. Now, one of my favorite sketching enhancements in 2012, I did a lot of work earlier in my career in the oil field industry and helped out companies like Halliburton and Oceaneering. And they do a lot of revolved parts, a lot of downhole equipment, really complex revolved profiles that are very tedious to dimension. Now, you've all probably known how you can do these centerline diameter dimensions, right? You pick a center line, then you go pick the entity to dimension, and then the trick is you place the dimension on the opposite side of the center line. But prior to 2012, this was super tedious. You had to do that process 3 clicks every time you wanted one of those revolved dimensions. So what the developers did with this is pretty clever. They basically made it work like ordinate dimensions. You pick the center line, and now all I have to go do is pick on the entities that I want dimensioned, and it will reference that same center line for each one. So it's very much like ordinate dimensions in that I established my ordinate being the center line, and now all I have to do is just go pick vertex or line, whatever it is, and it preserves that same center line. So now I can get multiple dimensions way, way faster.
Is that just restricted to lines only, or fillet?
A vertex or a line, yeah. The question, Monty, was from Monty, and the question was, is it restricted to just lines? No, you can use vertices or lines. Okay, so now I've got a swoopy part. And maybe this was an imported part. And I want to be able to reverse engineer it a little bit. I want to be able to extract some of the curves or the sketches so that I could maybe modify it a little bit and kind of one-off this design. Well, did you know that you can create curves at the intersection of any two or more surfaces or planes? But it's a little bit of a buried command, and the tool is called intersection curves. And the way you find it is you look on your cheat sheet if you've downloaded that, or down here in the bottom of my slide, tools, sketch tools, intersection curves. Okay, so tools, sketch tools, intersection curves. When you bring that up, you'll select a one or two or more combination of either faces or planes. So I could intersect a face with a plane with a plane, a face with a face, whatever. But in this case, I've selected that swoopy surface and intersected it with the top plane, and it then extracts for me a curve feature of basically an editable 3D sketch of that shape. Now, with that being an editable sketch, I can now go in and modify that if I want. And then I can build guide curves off of it. I can attach other geometry to it. So I can take that underlying geometry, change it, and then reparameterize it however I might want. If you saw the presentation I gave a couple of weeks ago on some surfacing techniques for the everyday user, we used that intersection curves command once to create a theoretical intersection for kind of a swept helix.
That's in the sketch tools.
Yeah, it's a sketch. The question is, is that found in sketch tools? Yeah, it's the reason that it's a sketch tool is because it creates a 3D sketch as opposed to a curve feature. Yeah. Okay, so I have some aluminum extrusion here, and I just want to copy that profile in a sketch. No problem. Convert entities, right? Except, what's the limitation of convert entities? Only gives you the outside profile. When I pick on that face, it doesn't recognize the islands. So I got to do that as a separate operation. Okay, so I pick the face, convert entities, it gives me the outside profile. Now I have to go select that circle, convert entities. Then I have to chain select that little cavity and convert entities. So due to user demand, in 2016, the developers added this capability in the convert entities dialog, where you can now select inner loops. In fact, you can get them all in one shot if you want to. Just bring up the convert entities tool, hit select all inner loops, and there you get them all in one sketch in one shot. Now, this is going to feel a little bit weird to you if you've used the convert entities in the past, because what we're used to doing is picking a face or an edge or something and then hitting convert entities. In this case, you bring up the convert entities and then you post select in order to get those additional entities. But once you try it a few times, you'll get the hang of it and it'll become second nature. All right, so remember when we talked about a few minutes ago, the select all command and how it works really well for filtering out an entity, like selecting all edges or selecting all faces? I'm going to parlay that into a really cool little bonus feature that applies great to creating frames and weldments. So I want a 3D sketch of this kind of prismatic type of a shape here. That would be a nasty 3D sketch to create, or a series of 2D sketches. Not any fun, okay? But if you take this approach, and I've got to give credit to my coworker Jordan Taddock for this idea, build a solid first. So you make like a little solid envelope of what you want your frame or your structure to be, where the hard edges would correspond to the frame, or the frame members. Okay, all right. So that's step one. Build yourself a little dummy solid. Next, go into a 3D sketch. Insert 3D sketch. Don't worry, you're not going to have to draw anything. Now pick one of the edges and do your Control A, select all. Then hit convert entities. Aha, you've just selected all the hard edges, convert entities. So now you have sketch entities laid up exactly on top of that solid. And now just hide or delete the dummy body. Okay, so now I have a 3D sketch of that cool frame structure, and I didn't have to draw anything. Question.
I've done this before, but if you don't want to have the body at all,
Mhm.
you can actually copy the previous paste it in the random part, show it the same extra.
Yeah, so if you don't want the body at all, you can copy and paste it to a new part, no problem. And then it won't have a reference at that point. But the other way around that too is to use the delete body command. And then it creates a parametric history-based feature of deleting the body. So it's not there. It's not getting rebuilt or anything. But you still have the parametrics, which is nice because if you go back to the original underlying sketch or the underlying feature that defined that dummy body, you can control the height, the width, everything about it without having that solid body there. So this is pretty cool. And you know what? We may have to come back and do a weldments tips and tricks if there's some interest in that. But this has some really nice downstream benefit so you don't have to waste a lot of time creating sketches for your frames and skids. And is that something that you all do a lot of? Do you build any like text or any fixturing with Bosch tubing, square tubing? No, not a lot. Okay. It would, most applications where I find folks, if they're not doing legit structural work, they're maybe building, I have to build a frame to move something or to a test fixture or something, would come in handy for something like that. So that's your super easy 3D sketch. And then of course, just go into weldments and attach those frame members. Now, 2019, by the way, we've totally re-architected the way we do weldments to where you don't even have to do this easy step. We've made it even easier, but that's 2019 for you guys. That might be a little bit down the road. Okay, so we just worked through about half a dozen or a dozen or two sketching enhancements. What I like about those is that if your sketch is right, you can be confident that your design is going to be right. Because so much really relies on the underlying sketches. So using some of those tips and techniques that you saw there, hopefully can help you be a little bit more confident with your designs as you move into feature modeling. So now I've got a handful of some feature modeling tips. Question.
I was really intrigued by the control select to get the top plane. Can you select a plane or is it only?
The question is when you're specifying the normal direction for normal to a face. So I'm going into a sketch, I'll pick on a face and say normal to. We talked about an option that lets you pick a second face with the control key to specify the direction of the normal. I'm not 100% sure on that. I think it has to be a face as opposed to a plane. I think that second selection.
Is it dynamic? So if that face changed the angle, would my sketcher then shift it vertical? Because that could be really useful for me when I'm doing like rotary, rotationally, especially if they're offset. Instead of doing horizontal and vertical, it has to be perpendicular. It's just all over the place. Kind of annoying, especially if I thought it was going to be vertical and then everything has to rotate by 20 degrees. A lot of relationships and rotate.
Yeah, so the question is if I've used that second planar reference to define the top vector and that face changes orientation, could that impact the vertical horizontal definition for the child sketch? I don't know the answer, haven't tested it. My gut would say it does not, but we can test that pretty easily. Good question. All right, so let's dive into some modeling tips just related to some of the modeling features. We'll take you back to 2016 with one of those enhancements that I look at now and wonder, why did it take us so long to figure this out? But when we do sweeps, like say a cut sweep or a boss sweep, the majority of the time, what shape do we sweep? A circle. Yeah, we're making a wire, we're making a tube, making a little channel cutout or something. Why do I need to make a second sketch if I know it's going to be a circle? So what they did in 2016, when you go into the sweep feature, oops, back one step here. To create that sweep, it just gives you an option in the property manager to sweep a circular profile without having to sketch it. Okay, so I just choose circular profile, pick the edge or the sketch that I want for my path, give it a diameter. There I go. Saves me a step, saves me from having to make an extra sketch and get it oriented the right way and get it constrained properly. It's a pretty nice time saver there with the circular profile sweep. Another one of those that took us a while to get, 2015, the pattern up to reference. So if I want a pattern of holes along the length of a member, for example, you know, the old school way of doing it, I learned this in Pro E back in 93, I think it was. You know, you would make an equation, you know what the total length of your part is. So it's you're basically back calculating what is the length of the spacing based on the offset and the number of instances. Okay, no big deal. It didn't seem like that big of a time suck to have to do that. But why couldn't we just say, hey, I want 12 instances spaced equally. You figure it out and let the software do it. Well, that's what the pattern option does, starting with 2015. You pick on the feature that you want to pattern, and instead of giving it an explicit length, you say just, hey, go up to this reference, and it's either a vertex or a face or a plane, and you either specify the offset that you want to fix or the number of instances that you want to fix, and it will figure out the other. And it works even with Instant 3D. So as I drag on that feature, you can see that it's dynamically expanding the spacing to maintain the number of instances. Works like you want it to work. Oh, and you saw an example of Instant 3D there just a second ago. That's when, if you've got this setting turned on, that's when you can grab that little blue ball at the end of a dimension and just dynamically drag your dimensions in 3D. That's pretty cool, but some users get frustrated with that because when you try to go back and modify the dimension by double clicking on it, you'll find that it's hard to select it because when Instant 3D is on, you only have to select the dimension one time to modify it. So here's the little trick with this. Instead of clicking on the dimension, go double click on the little blue dot, the Instant 3D dot, and that will bring up your modify dialog like you're used to seeing, where now I can enter equations, I can link variables, I can use the spin box. So I get the benefits of Instant 3D, but also have the ability to easily access that modify dialog when I want it. Okay, in this next example, I want to make a cut extruded up to a surface. Now that's no big deal, but here's a little shortcut. If you want to do an up to surface, just pick the surface, double tap on it in the graphics area, and it'll save you a trip over to the property manager where I have to pick up to surface and then I have to go back and pick the surface. So it'll just cut down on some mouse travel and a few extra steps. Once again, draw your sketch, insert the cut or boss feature, and just double click on the face that you want to extrude up to, and it'll make that feature for you without a trip to the property manager. That's a 2003 enhancement. Golly, 15 years old. If you work a lot with imported parts and you sometimes need to parameterize them, I need to move a hole, I need to change the size of a fillet. We have an add-in for that, of course, the FeatureWorks add-in. In 2016 or 17, I forget, that became a feature of SolidWorks standard. It used to be a professional feature. But did you know that you can turn on FeatureWorks and you can recognize a feature individually without having to go through the FeatureWorks menu? It's really simple. Here's my imported part. I want to recognize a chamfer or a hole or a fillet. Just pick on the face of that feature and go to Edit Feature. Wait a minute, it's not a feature. Yeah, but if you pick Edit Feature, it will recognize that. So it invokes the FeatureWorks add-in and just creates a parametric feature for whatever it is that you selected, the fillet, the hole, the chamfer, etc. So that's kind of a nice shortcut when I've got this imported model. I don't want to go through the hassle of recognizing all the geometry. I just need a couple things. Pick it up, pick on it, hit Edit Feature, and it's like a little shortcut to that FeatureWorks add-in. So there's a small sampling of some nice tips and tricks, a few of them kind of obscure, but ultimately when you get some of those under your belt, you're going to be able to build your parts faster. So let's get us now into assemblies. We've got 2 more sections to cover if we're going to make 70 tips in 90 minutes here. As we get into assemblies, one of my favorites that we snuck in 2013 And this will apply to you folks mostly when you're working out of your local cache, as opposed to when you're opening from PDM. But let's say I've got this folder full of parts, assemblies, drawings, a big folder. I've got hundreds of things in there. How do I filter it all down? Well, if you go under, of course, you've always been able to go under here and drop down this list and say, instead of all files, you could filter it down. But that's obnoxious because SolidWorks can open like 30 different file formats. So now you got to look through this long list just to find, I just want to filter out parts or just drawings or just assemblies. So to make that a little bit more usable, in 2013, they added these quick filter icons here. Just like you'd expect, you can filter just parts, just assemblies, just drawings, or any combination. And then there's a little bonus feature here, top level assemblies. So if I've got a bunch of assemblies in the same folder, I turn that feature on, or turn on that filter, and it looks at those assemblies and shows the ones that don't have any higher level references in that folder. Yeah, within that folder. So that's a nice little bonus. Just helps me find my stuff faster. You probably won't use that when you're searching out a PDM because you'll use a search card most of the time. But if you're just working out of your local cache, that's a nice little time saver. All right, if you came from a Creo Pro Engineer background, you know they have a tool called Query Select. And it lets you select stuff that's hidden behind other stuff. And when SolidWorks implemented this, it goes back to forever, probably 96, 97, something like that. We called it Select Other. It worked okay. Kind of clumsy though, a little bit difficult to figure out what's behind other things. So this has gotten some improvements over the years. The way Select Other works now is you click on a surface, and then when you pick from the pop-up, you choose Select Other. It now gives us a list that we can dynamically filter through and see what's behind the next thing. And if you continue to hit your right mouse button while you're working through that Select Other list, it takes away each layer. It takes away each successive entity in relation to depth of the screen. So it's basically letting you drill through the model to all those hidden references. So using this command, I could pick on the front of my model, and just by right mousing selectively through, it's going to peel back through all the way to the very back face, the very farthest away selection if I need to. So try that out a little bit. If you're struggling with how to make Select Other really work for you, and you find, hey, I just don't know how this works. Instead, I'm just going to rotate the model around. Give it a shot and try that right mouse click selection, because what that's doing is it's selectively taking away each layer the farther and farther you get into the depth of the screen.
You know what year this?
Select Other, I couldn't find when we first introduced Select Other because it's been there like forever. This addition to it, where we use the right mouse button to cycle through, I can't say exactly when it came in. Is probably. Oh, it's been there. Gosh, at least probably the late 2000s. Yeah, I can't say for sure, but it's not recent. But I would say that it's one of those things we didn't do it really well when we first launched that, back in the old days. And a lot of times what'll happen is if we didn't do it well to begin with, people kind of forget about it, and they don't pay attention when it does get enhanced. And then you overlook it and you go, wow, that's been there for 10 years? Huh. Yeah. Question back here.
Is there a way to hide faces?
Is there a way to hide individual faces other than this? Do you mean like on a permanent basis or just temporarily?
I mean, like, these faces all come back in the dialog anyway.
That's correct. We're temporarily hiding them.
All permanent.
Is there a way to quasi-permanently hide faces? The best way to do it would be to apply transparency to the face. Yeah. Yeah. There's not a hide face command. There's a hide body. And of course, in assemblies, you can hide components. which we'll get into here in a moment. But hiding faces, no, you'd have to be transparency. That's the best I can think of. It is, but it's just a temporary thing. It's peeling those layers away so that I can look inside the model to get at what I really want.
So from that command right there, you're able to right click and open whatever part you're looking for?
Can I open the part that I'm looking at from this menu? No, this is just letting me select that hidden entity. Once I have it selected, then yes, another pop-up comes up and then I could open it. This is simply to select it, to drill through the model to get to some kind of a selection. All right, I didn't explain that very well. My apologies. We'll go back and watch that one, maybe figure that out better for next time. And by the way, any of the things that you're seeing here today, if you have some follow-up questions, y'all have my email and Twitter and those kind of things, and we can get better answers to you if we need to. Hey, let's move on to another one that we talked about transparency for just a second. If you do turn something transparent, invariably you're going to struggle with this. I can't pick it now. It's transparent. It just selects through the model. Easy fix. Hold down the Shift key. If it's a transparent face, hold down Shift, and now you'll be able to select that face. Yeah, that bugs. That's always a V8 moment for folks when we show that one. We looked at in the user interface enhancements toward the top of the presentation, showed you a bunch of different ways to select things. Select mated to, select toolbox components, select hidden, select suppressed. What if you just want to select all of the identical components to whatever piece that I have selected? Like I've picked on this screw, I want to select everything that's identical to it. That's in there as well, in your selection tools. Select identical components. So if I pick on say a socket head cap screw and then hit select identical, and then maybe just hide everything else, this is a great way of doing a sanity check. I know I'm supposed to have 16 identical cap screws. How come I only have 15? Ah, okay, there's one that didn't show up. It's the wrong size. So you can do some quick QA just by filtering for identical components. Kind of a good use case there. Now in 2017, we can extend that even a little bit further. So let's say I've got all these identical components, or maybe a group of components that kind of need to group together. I just want to be able to select them all at the same time, or I want to organize them in the feature tree at the same time. You can group component instances. Really good for assembly patterns, for example, or identical instances of a part. You just right-click in the tree and say Group Component Instances, and you'll now see this display here, where I have all these socket head cap screws, and it's not a folder, but it shows a special kind of icon that shows that those are grouped together. And now I can operate on them as a group. I can hide them, I can suppress them, apply a material, apply a color, whatever. Just a nicer way of organizing and keeping track of what's in my assembly. Another question. Nested folders. Can I do nested folders in an assembly, in a part? Off the top of my head, I don't know the answer to that. It's been a while since I've tried it.
Other way to nest those within a basket folder, if in fact.
We can figure that out, though. That's an easy one to test. All right, so I'm in my assembly. I've hidden a bunch of components. Step back one here. How do I get them back? You can right-click and say Show Hidden Components, and it'll toggle you to like the hidden space, if you will, where you can see everything that was hidden, and then just tag on the ones that you want to bring back, and you exit out of that mode, and now everything that was hidden is now visible again. Show Hidden Components, and that's up here in the Assemblies toolbar, or it's available through the right-click menu. The bonus feature on that one, Control-Shift-Tab will temporarily show you a transparent view of everything that's hidden, and then you can just touch on them. But that's more of a kind of an advanced tip.
You can do nested folders.
So you can do nested folders. All right, I've not had a need to do that in a long time, and So glad you checked on that. All right, let's do a little bit of work on this little mechanical assembly here, do some mating and show you some improvements that we made back in 2016. For those of you that came from a Creo or PTC background like I did years ago, you know that how that software worked when you mate is when I insert a component, it shows up in its own window, and then I have to do my mates on 2 different windows, and then once it's fully defined, it'll put it into the other window. There's actually something to that. There's some nice elements of that style of way of working, but I think when our developers brought that in, they made it even a little bit better. So what you can now do, starting with 2016, is you can click on a component and hit this component preview button that just shows up in the pop-up. And now I have 2 side-by-side windows, and now I can pick in either window to make my mate selections. And I can rotate independently and so on. So it just makes it a little easier to isolate a component when I want to do some mating. So it's just right there in the pop-up. It shows up in its own window. And I don't have to fully constrain the model before it dismisses that window. I dismiss it when I'm ready to, just by hitting the exit button. Okay, so that's component preview. Pretty nice. If you're used to working the old-fashioned way, you know, you probably won't find a whole lot of value in using that, but once in a while you might find a reason to go in and turn on the component preview in case your assembly is getting kind of cluttered, kind of busy. Now, quick mates, we introduced this in 2014, and it's one of those that I look at and go, "Oh, why didn't we always do it this way?" If you think for a second about how we do sketch relationships, okay, I've got 2 lines and I want to make them perpendicular. I pick a line, control select, and a little pop-up shows up that just shows me what relationships I can add. It just kind of thinks about it, right? Why don't we do mates that way? Well, that's what quick mates do for you. If I pick 2 faces with a control select, or 2 circular faces, for example, it pops up a little menu and lets me do a concentric right there on the fly. I don't have to go to a mate command to do that anymore, starting with 2014. So quick mates, if you haven't started using that one since we brought that in 2014, give that a try, because it is a serious time saver when it comes to creating most of your basic type mates, your coincidence, your parallels, distances, concentrics, and so on. And let's play with this one a little bit more. Did you know that you can right mouse drag a component in the assembly when you want to just rotate it a little bit, maybe to make it a little more convenient for mating? Okay, that's good. The other thing that's really cool, we did this in 2015. It's called a profile center mate. Profile center mate takes 2 faces and just lines up the centroids of those faces. So it's almost like doing a coincident and 2 width mates all in one shot. So it works really well for like centering 2 plates together, or putting fasteners together with one mate command. That's profile center. Coincident and 2 widths. Yeah. So profile center mate would have been your ticket there. Mm-hmm. Do they have to have the same basic shape? Because it's taking the centroid of each profile. That should work for most shapes. I don't know. You'll probably find a way to break it, and if you do, let me know, because that would be interesting to see. Yeah, but it's also in your quick mates. So all you have to do is just pick the 2 faces, and it'll be right there, profile center, right at your fingertips. And incidentally, there's another little option button on that quick mates that comes in really handy with fasteners that'll lock the rotations down. If you're one of those folks, or if you have a company standard that says we don't like under constrained components, everything has to be fully defined, you don't want to have to go back in and manually lock all the rotations of your fasteners. You can do that at the time you place them. Just a little lock rotation button. Okay, so a number of little assembly enhancements, a lot of them having to do with mates. You know, it's the things that we do over and over again that you can really get some productivity savings out of. All right, so we're cruising through I've got the last section of usability tips here. about 8 or 10 or so that pertain to drawings, but I think there's going to be some dandies here for you. So hang on for just a few more minutes. This first one applies to those situations, probably doesn't happen here, but let's just say you have a really large drawing and it takes a long time to open and you don't want to wait for it. Did you know, starting with, I want to say it was 2012, there's an option in the open dialog that lets you open a drawing quick view. Okay, quick view loads only the graphics representation of the drawing. It's not going to load any model references. So, asterisk caveat here, this will not display correctly if your model has changed since the drawing was last opened and saved. But if you are in sync and up to date, that drawing is going to open really, really fast because it's only loading the graphics. Bonus feature, if it's a multi-sheet drawing, you can choose which sheets you want to open to make it go even faster. I only want to see the first sheet just to make sure it's the right one or whatever. Or I've got a design review. I just need to show the first couple of pages, just a graphical representation of it. Not going to make any edits. Try that quick view option and it'll come up really fast. Now, when it does open up, you'll get the graphics representation of what it was like when it was last saved. And then notice over here in the feature tree, no information because it didn't load any body information and didn't load any references. But if you decide, yeah, I do want to go into edit mode on this, no problem. Just right click in that sheet somewhere and say load sheet. And now you'll pay the price and it'll load those references just for that one sheet. Okay? Give that a shot. Find one of your nastiest drawings and try it in quick view just to see if it really does open faster. I think you'll find that it does. Especially when you're working off your local cache, because you're not loading across the network. You're just simply opening up the graphics information that's stored in that file. Give that a try. Around 2010, we introduced a little pop-up when you picked on dimensions or annotations in your drawings called the drawing palette. It looks like a little dimension tool. And when you click on it, it expands out and gives you a whole bunch of little capabilities you can do, like adding tolerances, styles, spacing out the dimensions, all without having to go over to the property manager and make those individual changes. So it's a really handy way of selecting a group of dimensions, wait for that little dimension palette to pop up, and then I can make bulk changes to a group of dimensions all in one shot. That's nice. It works really well. I couldn't live without it anymore. And another thing that's cool about it is there's an auto arrange button on here. So if we tie in, remember our select all tool, where if you select one dimension and then Control A, I can select all my dimensions, bring up the dimension palette, and then there's an auto arrange button on that. We'll see it come around here again. Pick a dimension, Control A, dimension palette, and then hit the auto arrange down in the bottom corner. It auto spaces everything out for me. Really nice. What's the spacing, you ask? Monty? What's the spacing? You're just wondering about that? The spacing that is taken obviously from your drawing template. Yeah. Yeah, that is pretty slick. That will help you clean up your drawing. It's probably not going to be perfect the first time out, but it will be a lot closer than you would if you were trying to do that all manually. So give that a shot if you haven't used that one. Okay, so I've got an assembly isometric view. I might want to show it with the colors that correspond to the model colors. That's an easy thing to do, but it's not obvious where you find it. And it's in the document properties, detailing. And all you do is just turn on this little flag here that says use model color in your HLR views. So if you got your model colors all nice and corresponding to the way you want that thing to look, you can also show those same colors on your HLR views in a drawing. I think we introduced this next one. I want to say it's around 2013 or 2014. It's called highlighting changes for changed dimensions. So you open up a drawing and you wonder, okay, what changed since the last time? There's really no way to do that before. I mean, PDM can sort of do it by adding notes and whatnot as you check stuff in. But wouldn't it be nice to just open up the drawing and anything that changed, it shows in a different color or it puts a little flag on it or something. Okay, so the enhancement that's here is found in your system options, colors, and you can specify a color for any dimensions that changed when you open up a drawing. And the way it shows up on the screen then is I set mine to green. So when I open up this drawing, here's a dimension that changed since the last time this drawing was opened and saved. And in fact, if you hover over that, it will even show you what it used to be. You might want to try taking advantage of that one. Little capability that we borrowed from SolidWorks Composer a few years back, 2012. This was a really popular enhancement. It's called magnetic lines. So I'm laying out some annotations or especially balloons on a bomb drawing. You go into the annotations menu and you say insert a magnetic line, and it just lets you draw out this little rubber band line, and you can snap your balloons onto it and get them laid out and oriented really beautifully. And of course, if I change the line, if I can drag it around, I can change the spacing on it. I can snap balloons on and off of it. But it helps you make just a really clean looking drawing super fast by taking advantage of those magnetic lines. Got a lot of requests for spline leaders when you make pattern drawings. It's not a requirement, but it's just kind of a stylistic a feature of pattern drawings. So we added that capability a while back, 2015, I think it is. And if you just have some notes, balloons, whatever, anything that has a leader on it, you can go over to the property manager and you'll now have an option for splines. And it's basically like a style spline. So you have this control polygon that you can shape those and get them looking real nice. Yeah, I think what we did here, I didn't make this little screen capture myself, but what I would have probably done is turned on a selection filter for annotations. Yeah. And just drag a box around. The other way you could do that, of course, is select all, hit one of the notes, do a Control A, and now I've got them all, and I can change them all in one shot. With all the startups here in Northern California, a lot of pattern drawings, this one would be pretty popular. Okay, going all the way back to some of the earlier versions of SolidWorks, when you peel off a section view or a projected view, you know that it locks the orientation to the parent. Now, you can drop that view and come back and break that alignment after the fact just through the right mouse menus. Alignment, break alignment. But a little shortcut to that is if you hold the control key down before you place that projected or section view, it'll break that alignment. And then you can position that anywhere you want, even on another sheet. Little known. Something we added in 2015 that's really helpful when you're creating angle dimensions to different quadrants. Instead of sketching construction geometry, now all you have to do is pick on the vertex of the intersecting angle lines, and it'll give you a little crosshair. Let's watch it come around again. So I get my dimension tool. I'm going to dimension this angle, and then I just touch that vertex, and I get this little crosshair that lets me pick the quadrant that I want to place that dimension. So no more having to draw fake construction geometry just to place a dimension. 2013, probably the most popular drawing enhancement was the section view assist. I call it one-click sections. Instead of having to go in and draw a section line, turn it into a section, and then peel the view, you just hit the section view tool and it places either a vertical or a horizontal line. You go snap it onto the geometry entity you want, and it peels the view off. Optionally, there's some different configurations for if you want to do an offset or aligned section. But if you just want a straight up section view, you can really do it in one click by picking the section view tool and peeling that off. Just made that a whole lot easier in 2013. Two more to go. Really popular enhancement from folks that make drawings and produce geometry outside the boundaries of the sheet. Like maybe you have some views or maybe some notes or things that aren't in the printable area. And the nuisance was always this, that when you did a zoom to fit, it zoomed to the full extent of the space rather than just the sheet space. It's kind of a nuisance because then you always had to go back and zoom in just to the sheet. So what we added in 2015 is a new heads up toolbar option, zoom to sheet. And that just zooms to the visible area of the sheet boundary, not what's outside the sheet. Pretty simple. In drawings, it replaces zoom to fit. Yeah. And the last one I have for you, it's an oldie but a goodie, going all the way back to 2008. But did you know you could copy an entire drawing sheet from one drawing file to another? You can do it. And it's as simple as you'd guess, Control C, Control V, or even drag and drop. So in this case, I've got two drawing files open. I want to copy sheet number 2 from the left side drawing and just paste it over into the right side drawing. There it goes. Control drag and drop, or Control V, Control C. And it just pastes that into that new drawing file. And of course, all the references that would be required to go with it. But where a really good use case for this might be, let's say I have, if this assembly might have multiple different configurations, and I want separate drawing files for each of those configurations, even though there's one master assembly file. This would be a very quick way to populate that. So I can take one sheet that's all fully detailed, make multiple copies of it, and now I just go in and swap out the configurations in each of those views. So a really good use case of that one. That's always a crowd pleaser when folks, especially when we realize that now we've been able to do that for now over 10 years. Okay, so a couple of really good but usable drawing enhancements. When your drawing is right, there's just a lot of confidence there. And when your drawing is wrong, you know, everything's wrong. So hopefully these are some tips that can help you reduce some of those errors. So in right around 90 minutes here, we've gone through just those core areas: usability, sketching, feature modeling, assembly modeling, and drawings. A whole bunch of great SolidWorks life hacks compiled by the real experts, you know, the technical manager colleagues of mine that together have hundreds of years of expert level usage of the software. And, you know, some of these that we've compiled from users as well. I hope there's some things that you can take and use and be more productive, you know, because everybody's got a drawer at home with cables, right? But what if you took your old paper towel rolls and made little organizers for that? Wouldn't life be better if you did that? Or instead of your tacos falling over, you could just stick a fork in them and stand them up. I mean, that just makes dinner more fun if I could do that. And no comment on that one. Yeah, but you know, the big idea here, the big takeaway: when you know better, you do better in life and in SolidWorks. So I sure hope that you've found a few things that you can use right away that will make your SolidWorks life a little bit more enjoyable and get you through life a little faster. So challenge I have for you all is take your cheat sheet. Remember the couple things that stood out for you, you know, circle them, come back to them, and see if they really do help you. And there's my contact info. Please share with me your favorite tips if there was something that I didn't cover here, so I can steal it and use it as my own. But if you have a great idea for a tip, let me know. And of course, if you have ideas for what kind of content you'd like to see in these kind of sessions, there's a whole bunch of colleagues just like me who love getting out and visiting our best customers and sharing information with you. So let me know what kind of things are of interest to you, and we'll put together sessions for you. All right. So thanks a million for having me out. It's been my pleasure to be here, and I'll take any questions at this time. And if there are none, once again, thank you for having me.
Do you have any questions for Brad?
There's no questions online either. Thank you, everybody, for the tips and tricks seminar. We'll be having this posted. Next week, we have another seminar, and that one will be on industrial design. So I'll send out some messages for that. You will get Brad's cheat sheet as well as a recording of this in the coming week. Thank you very much.